Hi, this is Jasper. Welcome back. I miss you guys so much. Today we're going to look at logging in Spring Boot application. Before we start, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so. This will help my channel to grow and it also will allow you to not miss out my new weekly post. And for those who are new to my channel, I do videos on full stack technologies such as Spring Boot. If you're interested in this, please make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn the bell next to it so you don't miss out any one of my new videos. Without further ado, let's get down to business. As can be seen here, I have already opened a simple Spring Boot application in the IntelliJ IDE itself. I created this simple application of the Spring Initializer website. If you wonder how to do it, you can just click the video over here and it will show you step by step. And as always, let's head to Palm XML to see what dependencies do we have over there. Okay, so as can be seen here, it really doesn't have many dependencies. All it has is basically just a Spring Boot Starter Web and Spring Boot Starter Test dependencies. And also, the Spring Boot Maven plugin, just like any other Spring Boot application. And today we're going to look at the logging functionality in Spring Boot application. And you'll be wondering why you don't see any logging related dependencies. Well, it's because Spring Boot Starter Web depends on some other dependencies, and those dependencies already have the logging dependencies defined. And thanks to Maven's transitive dependency resolution, our application will be able to pull in those dependencies automatically without us explicitly declaring those dependencies over here. To prove this, we can just go to the POM file of this artifact, and over here you will see a dependency called Spring Boot Starter, and go to the POM file of this artifact, and then you will find this other dependency called Spring Boot Starter Logging, and go in here. In this POM XML, you will see the famous logback dependency, log4j dependency, and the Java util logging dependencies. So that's why we don't have to define it in our own POM XML. And so here, let's run this application and see what kind of logging do we have at this moment without any other further configuration. So first of all, let's create a configuration. We'll choose Spring Boot, and we'll just call it logging application, and we need to specify the main class. So let's search by name. How about let's go to the project, and let's go to source, go to min, go to Java, and we'll click on this, hit OK. And environment, we don't have to change anything. Then we can just click on OK. Then let's hit the play button, see what do we get. Okay, so here we can see our application is started, and it already prints out some logs for us. They're all at the info level. The reason why we don't see any debug or trace level is because by default Spring Boot only enables logger at the level of linfo. But in order to see Spring Boot's debug or trace level log, we can easily achieve that by different ways. So the first way we can do that is we can go to the application.properties, and we can add this property called debug. Then we'll write true, and with this we should be able to see the debug level of Spring Boot log. So let's run this application again and see what do we get this time. Okay, so as expected, if I scroll all the way to the top, you will see that now we have a log at the debug level, and besides that we also have some other useful log information such as auto configuration related logs for you to troubleshoot when your application has any startup problem. And if we want to see the trace level of Spring Boot logs, it's again very easy, still in the sim file, but this time we're gonna write this other property called trace, and we'll set it to true, and let's run this application again, see what do we get this time. So here, as expected, you can see log at the trace level. So this is the first way of giving us debug or trace level of Spring Boot logs. The second way would be we can pass a VM options to enable it. So we can do debug equals to true, and we just delete this. So this time we should only have a debug level of a Spring Boot logs. Yes, so as can be seen here, you no longer have trace level of Spring Boot logs. Isn't that amazing? Spring Boot actually allows you to configure things very easily through different ways. The third way we can achieve the same thing is to use program arguments. So we can write trace equal to true, and we'll just delete this. Let's see what do we get this time. I will just rerun this application, and hopefully we can see trace level of logs. Yes, so we do see trace level of logs. So now so far you have known there are 3 different ways that you can enable debug or trace level of Spring Boot logs. I hope by using this you can find the root cause to your Spring Boot application startup problems. Or if you just want to know what's happening during Spring Boot application startup, you can always enable the trace level and just read the logs yourself. So that's it for this part. Next, we're gonna look at how can we enable logs for our own custom class. For the most of the time, that's what we want to use the log for. Right? We want to log useful information for ourselves, so it will help us to troubleshoot problems later on easily. So to do that, let's first create a controller so that we can print out some logs on demand. I will just call it index controller, and here we'll just create a method called index. Okay, then we will use this REST controller annotation to mark this class as a controller class. Then we need to also use a mapping annotation. I will just do it get mapping, so we'll map this method to the root URL of our application. And now let's create a logger. So here we'll use the logger from slf4j, and we'll just call it log, and we'll write logger factory.get logger. We'll pass our current class as the argument. Then let's write some logs so that we can see the logs in the console. So the first one I want to do is trace. So the message I'm going to put is very simple. I just call it this is my trace message. And after that, I'm going to do a debug message. I'm going to call it this is my debug message. And the third one I'm going to write is an info log. This is my info message. And the fourth one I'm going to do is a warn message. So I'm going to write this is my warn message. And the last one I'm going to write is an error message. So the message itself will be this is my error message. And we have to return something because this method, the return type is a string, it's not a void. So here I can just write something like check console for printed logs. Okay, so we're all done now. Let's run this application, see what do we get this time. Okay, so the application is started, and so let's move to the browser and try to hit this application to see what do we get in the console. So the application is started on port 8080, so we can just hit this. Then we'll see here it shows up our log message, right? So by default, we are able to see logs that are above the info level. However, we don't see the trace log or the debug log. So how can we allow us to see our log at the trace or debug log? Well, the Spring Boot gives us a few ways to allow us to make this happen, and they're very super easy. And let me just show you them one by one. So the first way that can allow us to see this kind of level of logs is to go to application.properties, then use this property called logging level followed by your package name. So for me, it will be io.github.jasperzs. Then we'll put our desired level. So I'm just gonna put the trace. Now, if we run this application again and then we go to our browser to refresh the page, we should this time to see the trace level of log. So let's refresh the page, come back to console. Yeah, so now as expected, you can see we see the trace level of logs. So this is one way, right? And the other way that you can do it is through VM options. So here we can again use something like -d logging.level. Then once again, we need to use our package name, and we'll put our desired log level. Again, I will put something called trace. So let's hit OK. Then let's run this application again. Then hopefully we should see our trace level of log again. If not, then we're in big trouble. So let's go back to the browser and hit refresh. Aha, so once again we got our trace level logs. So that proves this way of setting the desired level of logs also works. And there's actually a third way that can allow you to do the same thing as well. So we just copy this, so I don't have to type this again. Then we'll move on to program arguments, and we use dash dash, and we paste. Here, let's run this application again, and we should once again see the trace level of logs. Go back to the browser and refresh the page. Yeah, so here we do see it again. So Spring Boot actually gives you 3 different ways to configure your desired log level yourself. One is through application.properties, and one is through VM option, and one is through program arguments. And this actually naturally lead us to the fourth part of today's video, which is some of you may raise this question. What if I configure the logger level using all 3 methods at the same time? What happens? Do I just get a conflict? Can my application start up correctly? Well, let's try it out and see what do we get this time. So here, I'll just make this to be error. Then I'll go to the logging application, and we will put the VM option again. And here I'm gonna call it info. Then program arguments, I'm gonna do a debug. So let's run this application again and see what do we get this time. I hope it's not a conflict, and I hope our application can still start up correctly without any problem. So let's see. And once again, head back to the browser, I refresh the page. Moment of truth. Okay, so our application can actually run perfect fine, and in fact we get a debug level for logs. So that means although you have set up your desired log levels through application.properties, through VM options, and also through program arguments, but program arguments takes the highest precedence, and then followed by VM options, then followed by application.properties. And if you don't believe me, let's try to delete this and see what do we get this time. If we get error level of logs only, that means this takes more precedence, else the VM options is. So now let's run this application again, see what do we get this time. So head back to the browser, refresh the page, and you see we get an info level of log. So indeed that means the application.properties takes the least precedence, while the VM options is at the middle, right? So if you have any question, just drop me a comment in the comment section below, and I will get back to you. And if you don't have any question, perfect, you can just drop me a comment saying what kind of video you want to watch next, and I will take that into consideration. So that's it for today. I'll see you guys next time. Bye for now.